There was a village that forgot how to burn, not in smoke or in flame, but in spirit. It lay nestled between a pale mountain and a hushed river, timeless in its appearance, unmarked by war or weather. And yet, something unseen had decayed. There were no ruins to show, no great disaster to blame. The houses still stood, the roads still wound through the valley, the people still spoke, still worked, still ate, but they no longer looked each other in the eyes. Once, long ago, this village had been built by hands that bled, by men who carved paths through stone, who planted trees with the knowledge they'd never sit beneath them. Fathers had taught sons not by words, but by example. There had been rites, codes, fire in the hearts. Now it was all comfort, excuses, and quiet erosion. They argued about repairs, but no one lifted a hammer. They made counsels, but no one showed up. The well had gone dry, but they all waited for someone else to fix it. The old wall that protected the east side of the village had cracked 2 winters ago. Still, it stood barely, and so they spoke of next month, of when the weather is better, and always of someone else. The men had learned to speak like boys. The boys had learned to expect nothing of themselves, and the women had learned to carry what the men would not. There was no enemy, no crisis, just a slow leak in the soul of the place. And then, one morning he appeared. No one knew where he came from, whether he had always been there or arrived in the night. No family, no introduction. He was tall, but not large, quiet, but not cold. His eyes did not wander. They watched, not with judgment, but with clarity, like someone who saw what was without being disturbed by it. He wore plain clothes, the kind you'd forget after he passed. No sword, no badge, no promise, just a man, with a back straight and steps deliberate. He stood at the edge of the cracked wall, the one they'd all ignored for years, and without a word, bent down and lifted a stone, not to repair the whole wall, not to impress. He simply picked it up and placed it back where it belonged. The stone was heavy, pointless perhaps. The wall would still crumble, but he didn't seem to mind. The villagers walked past him that day. Some whispered, some chuckled. One man shouted, "Hey, what's the point of that? You think one stone changes anything?" The man did not answer. He simply placed another stone beside the first, then stood, wiped the dust from his hands, and walked away. The next morning he returned. No speech, no permission asked. He began again, a stone at a time. The children watched him from a distance. Mothers called them inside, suspicious of a man so quiet. The elders scoffed. "This isn't how things are done," they said, though none remembered how things were ever done before. Still, he continued. By the 5th day, a few men began mocking him, loudly. "Maybe he's simple," one said. "Or maybe he wants to be a hero," another added. But he wasn't trying to save anything. He never looked for eyes, never explained. He simply carried the stone. And when that portion of wall stood firm again, he moved on, this time to the footbridge that crossed the riverbank, a bridge so worn and neglected, most people had stopped using it altogether. Again, he did not rebuild the whole thing. He just fixed what he could with what he had. One plank, then another. People muttered, "He's wasting his time." But none could look away. Something strange was beginning to happen. The town, so used to noise, now had a rhythm. His rhythm. Stone, step, sweat, silence. He didn't bring fire. He didn't start a revolution. He just began to restore what was forgotten. And yet, something shifted, not in the streets, but in the hearts. A silence that had once meant decay, now meant anticipation, a waiting, a wondering. Would he return again tomorrow? And he did. The rains came early that year. They didn't bring renewal, only more weight. Heavy skies, slick mud, tools rusting under the drip. And still, the man returned. His boots sank deeper now with each step. His hands, once clean, bore cuts that never fully closed. Yet his pace did not falter. Stone by stone, step by step, he began repairing the roof of the old town hall, the one that leaked so badly in winter that meetings had been cancelled for years. No one had touched it in a decade. A ladder leaned against the side, not borrowed, built. His own hands, shaping wood before dawn. By mid-morning, villagers stood beneath their awnings, watching him nail down shingles through the downpour. No rope, no audience, just work. He did not move with haste, nor hesitation. Every strike of the hammer echoed across the square like a drum beat calling something ancient back from slumber. That's when the boy began to follow him, no more than 12, barefoot, with a wool tunic too thin for the season and eyes too sharp for his age. At first he kept distance, watching from behind the trees, then from a fence post. By the third week he walked just 10 paces behind. He never asked to help, he just mirrored. When the man fetched stones, the boy rolled them closer. When the man carried wood, the boy would drag a branch. When the man wiped the sweat from his brow, the boy mimicked the motion, even if dry. One day the man finally looked at him, not to command, not to reward, just to see. The boy froze. The man turned back to his work. Later, as they walked toward the next site, a path clogged with years of uncut brush, the boy asked, barely above a whisper, "Why do you do all this?" The man stopped, not surprised by the question. He didn't turn. He simply answered, "Because it must be done," and then kept walking. No lecture, no lesson, just a truth that could not be bargained with. That phrase spread like a current beneath the village's hushed breath. Because it must be done. He didn't say it to convert, or to prove. He said it like he breathed it. And in the days that followed, others began to shift. It started small. One man, curious, repaired his own doorstep. Another cleared the weeds that had overtaken the grave markers, not to be seen, but because something stirred within them when they saw the man. Still, most mocked. They called him the mule, the martyr, the ghost of labor. He's trying to be a savior, they said, carrying the world on his back. But he never once claimed to carry the world. He only carried what was in front of him, and that made all the difference. One night, someone destroyed his work. The newly mended section of wall, smashed, stones scattered. A quiet act of rebellion by someone who could not stand the mirror he had become. The villagers found the rubble the next morning. The boy cried. The man did not. He arrived, as always, just after dawn. No anger, no speech. He picked up the same stone, began again. One man shouted, "Aren't you angry? They ruined it." The man looked up, not to answer him, but to meet his gaze, and said only, "If it falls, I build. If it rots, I clean. If it breaks, I repair. That is all." The man who asked the question never mocked him again. But even the strongest knees tremble in private. That winter, after a long storm, the man sat beneath the broken canopy by the eastern ridge, a place where no one could see him. His hands trembled from frost. His breath shook with fatigue, and for the first time, he stared at his palms as if questioning whether they still belonged to him. He pressed them into the earth. "I am tired," he whispered, not to be heard, but to release the truth. He didn't cry. He didn't curse. He only allowed the weight of the work to settle on him, fully, honestly. And then, he rose, slowly, deliberately, a man allowed to feel the burden, but not ruled by it. He picked up the axe again and returned to the village before sunrise. The boy saw this moment from a distance, and it planted something deeper than admiration. It planted reverence. So one day, the boy tried to carry more than he could. He saw the man lifting logs, hauling stones, and in a rush of pride, the boy grasped a heavy beam meant for the bridge's underframe. He strained. His legs bent, then snapped beneath him. The beam collapsed. The boy's wrist twisted beneath it. He cried out. The man rushed forward and lifted it without a word. He checked the boy's hand. The wrist was not broken, but bruised badly. The boy choked back tears. "I thought I could—" The man interrupted gently. "Don't carry what you haven't earned yet." And then quietly, "But you will." That was the only praise he ever gave. From that day on, the boy stopped copying. He started building, slowly, clumsily, but intentionally. He learned where to place his hands, when to wait, when to strike, how to serve without being seen. Others followed too, silently. A young mother sweeping the temple floor, a widower straightening stones on the old bridge, a carpenter reforging hinges without being asked. No one declared a movement. No one crowned a leader. The man never asked them to follow, but his burden had become their compass. And it wasn't just physical work. Men began taking ownership of their silence, apologizing where they'd once deflected, standing tall where they'd once slouched behind sarcasm. They had seen a man carry weight without resentment, and it forced them to question why they dropped their own. The village began to breathe again. Fires were lit not just in homes, but in hearts, because something new had arrived. Not the man, but the standard. Winter came without warning that year. The river froze shallow. The trees turned gray. And the man, he was still there. He moved slower now. The weight of many mornings pressed into his bones. His coat was thin, patched where fire had once bitten through. His boots cracked at the heel. But his stride, unbroken. He now worked on the village well, the heart of it all. Abandoned years ago after it dried, overgrown with moss and regret. He didn't question whether water still ran beneath it. He dug. The boy, now stronger, nearly a man himself, helped him break through the stone layers. They worked without ceremony, one strike at a time, one breath at a time. Others joined too, old hands calloused again. Younger ones learned the grip of a shovel. By midwinter, water returned, cold, clear, and with it, a silence filled with awe. They drank first in silence. No toasts, no songs, only nods, only knowing. The man smiled once, just once, a soft curve beneath tired eyes. That night he walked through the village as he always did, not above them, not apart, but through. He passed the rebuilt path, the cleared temple, the bridge now stronger than before. He passed homes he'd never entered, children he'd never held, men who now stood upright. No one called out, no one clapped. They only stepped aside, eyes steady, as if sensing something final in his footsteps. By dawn, he was gone. His tools were neatly stacked beside the well, his coat folded, no footprints leading away. The village searched, half-heartedly at first, then with urgency, then with a quiet acceptance. He had not left a name, not a story, only a rhythm. Stone, step, sweat, silence. But it was enough. Years passed. The village no longer needed to argue about tasks. They had become the kind of people who acted, who bore weight before they were asked, who spoke less and did more. There was no statue of him, no holiday in his name, only a phrase, now etched into the stone beside the well. Because it must be done. And above it, a smooth stone set apart from the others, not for decoration, but as a symbol. The boy, now a man, placed it there the day after the man vanished. He had carved it in silence, not with flourishes, but with hands that remembered. Years later, he himself became a father. His own son asked him once, "Who built this village?" And he answered simply, No one did. We only followed the man who carried it. The boy blinked. Did he rule? No, the father said. He carried, and we learned to carry too. And the boy understood. Some men try to lift their name, others try to lift their nation. But the rarest of men lift the invisible. The rot, the silence, the decline no one dares to name. And by carrying it, they carve a trail, not to be followed blindly, but to remind the rest of us that the world was never too heavy, only too often left in the dirt. He was never crowned. He never claimed anything. But when the weight was too much for the world, he chose to carry it, and left behind a path made of stone, sweat, and silence. This story was presented by the Marble Sage, where masculinity is forged, not faked. No motivation, no fluff, just discipline, awareness, and the work it takes to become a man. If you made it this far, you're not like most men. You waited, you watched, you listened. That tells me you're not chasing noise. You're building something real. So if this story sparked something in you, like the video, subscribe, and share it with a man who's ready to carry his weight. And drop a comment below. What burden are you choosing to carry, starting today? Not for praise, not for power, but because it must be done.